Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down the threat of severe weather across a pretty large chunk of the United States over the next couple of days, which will bring the risk for significant damaging winds, large to very large hail, and even a couple tornadoes. I'll give you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today. We'll first begin with the Ohio Valley. This is an area that we've seen extreme flooding over the past 12 to 24 hours. There have been flash flood emergencies in some areas in western Kentucky, including Paducah, Kentucky, and even near Mayfield, which those areas have seen as much as 12 inches of rain in the past 24 hours. We mentioned this in last night's forecast. There would be extreme flooding in that region. Unfortunately, that is what ended up happening, and we're still seeing a ton of rainfall this morning and as well as into the early afternoon as this system slowly moves to the south and east. And you'll notice how high the cloud tops are here in the infrared imagery. Once we get to that black color there, that is representing very cold cloud tops, which means not just heavy rain, but also a lot of frequent lightning. So it's just a mess over there right now, and that's going to continue for the next several hours until this finally moves down to the south as we go into the early to mid-afternoon hours. Further to the east, we're watching another area for severe weather today. That'll be for mainly isolated damaging winds and hail. That'll be associated with what we're already seeing in terms of this flooding threat. That'll move to the east. That'll be able to spawn some showers and storms later today back over in areas like Virginia and North Carolina. So make sure you're staying weather aware there. The other low pressure system back up in northeast Canada that brought some extreme flooding to the northeast is finally moving away from the United States. It took long enough, but that's finally out of here. And now we're watching for our next storm, which is located up here near North Dakota. This is what could bring the threat for maybe even a low-end severe weather event back over in areas like the Midwest later today, with damaging winds, large hail, and maybe even a couple tornadoes being possible. And further down to the south, we also have another area to watch for this afternoon for some more severe weather. This will be a fairly active weather pattern due to the jet stream that we have that is pretty much being able to bring a train of storms here to the United States. So very interesting stuff here over the next 12 to 24 hours. We'll break down again all of it in detail for you in just a few moments. Before I show you that, I wanted to show you the amount of rainfall that we've seen here in Kentucky and Tennessee over the past 24 hours. And notice, look at this one patch area here. This is through 6 a.m. this morning, and there's obviously been additional rainfall since then. We have a flash flood emergency in areas like Paducah and as well as in that area that I just circled. But those areas have seen a ton of rainfall. That orange area there is around 10 to 12 inches of rain being estimated by radar. At this current time, it's around 13 to 14 inches of rainfall that's fallen in about the last 12 to 24 hours. So really extreme rainfall there. And unfortunately, it's not really moving out until later this afternoon. So it's just going to continue to rain there. And that's going to cause even more issues. Now let's talk more about the pattern that we're in here right now across the United States. And we're going to look at the jet stream because that's what controls the weather here across the United States most of the time. And right now, the jet stream's located here in the northern plains, really across the northern tier of the United States. By the way, that's pretty typical for this time of the year. Usually this jet stream's lifted up this far to the north in July and August, and that allows more for that heat down in the southern plains and southwest United States and even down in the southeast. With this El Nino, though, we're seeing extreme heat in parts of the southern plains right now, and that's really not something that anybody wants to see right now. Areas like Phoenix, Arizona, for example, their record low temperature was just set last night of 97 degrees. That was the low temperature this morning. That's unbelievable. But this high pressure system is our heat dome. That's keeping all this heat right now in the southern plains in the southwest United States. Meanwhile, that jet stream's lifted up to the north. Here's that low pressure system, that storm that'll be moving into the Midwest over the next couple of days. That'll bring the risk for severe weather and eventually going towards the Ohio Valley. Notice how strong the upper level winds are, though, here across the northern plains. They're not the strongest they've ever been. Obviously, the red is where it's usually the strongest, but this is at least a moderately strong jet stream that we're seeing here in the northern plains and into the Midwest. This will increase the longevity of some of the storms that we do see today. So we'll have to watch that pretty closely, and that threat will continue into tomorrow. You'll notice that jet stream starts to really just stay pretty much at the same intensity as it moves towards the Ohio Valley. So overall, it's not really going to impact the severe weather a whole lot. It just means the longevity of the supercells will be pretty similar to what we're going to see today. Then our trough will be located back in areas near Wisconsin. It's positively tilted, which if you remember, we talked about a lot of the negatively and positively tilted troughs back in severe weather season, really around April or so. We talked about this a lot in forecasts. Positively tilted troughs, though, usually don't pull as much moisture, and overall, the severe weather threat is usually lower with positively tilted troughs. So we don't have to be as concerned about severe weather, but it still does exist with systems like this, especially with the upper level winds still being at least somewhere in the moderate stage of being strong. And then once we head toward the weekend, you'll notice that heat dome in the southwest United States, it does actually move further back to the west, and this will allow for a little bit of cooler air to usher in to areas like the Ohio Valley and perhaps even the southern plains. So some good news there overall. Jet stream will remain pretty strong. Meridional jet stream, though, overall all going to be impacting the United States, not zonal. Once we get closer to Sunday into Monday, that heat dome sits down there in the southwest United States. Again, notice that curvature and notice how it dips down to the south, and that'll allow for some cooler weather and areas like the southeast United States. It won't reach Florida, but it will reach areas like maybe northern Georgia and Alabama. Once we get closer to Monday into Tuesday, that heat dome unfortunately will start to creep its way off to the east, and you'll notice how far lifted off to the north this jet stream becomes. It's going to be all the way back up into Canada, and this will allow for a heat wave to actually reach areas potentially as far north as areas like the Midwest. So we'll have to watch this pretty closely as we head into next week, but again, things remain a lot more uncertain really once we get past this weekend. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for today here across the United States on Wacky Weather Wednesday. We do actively have a slight risk of severe weather, and it does extend from the Midwest back into areas like the Central Plains. This is where really the biggest concern is today for severe weather, because we're watching for all modes of severe weather. This does include areas like Wisconsin, Minnesota, back through areas in Kansas, and even parts of the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle. Main concern for today is damaging winds, large to very large hail, and be mindful those hatched areas, including Minneapolis. Those are the areas that we could see some hail exceeding 2 inches in diameter. That also includes Nebraska. That is where we have a threat of hail upwards of baseball size. So definitely make sure you're protecting your vehicle. Again, not everybody will see that size hailstone, but we could see that in a couple of supercells that do end up developing later today. Notice the tornado risk. It's not exactly just a very low threat. It's a low threat overall, but it's not very low. Very low is that 2% probability, that green shaded area. We do actually have a little bit more of an increased risk though for maybe an isolated tornado or two back in that brown shaded region, which is in eastern and northeastern Minnesota, back through northwestern Wisconsin, and this is where we could have a couple of tornadoes. The shear will be a little bit higher here, and the storm organization is favored for supercell development potentially being discrete in that region. So that's where we have to watch for that tornado threat closely today. Notice there's another chance for an isolated tornado through the afternoon back down in areas in the Ohio Valley and as well as near the Dixie Alley, and then another small tornado risk back over in eastern Nebraska. Again, maybe a brief tornado today, but overall the threat is low at this time. And before I show you the timing, this is the tornado parameter, so it gives us an idea of where really the greatest tornado risk will be today. And notice back over to the right side of your screen, that's where we do have a little bit more shear involved with the supercells that we'll have later today across areas like eastern Minnesota, and where we start to see those little blue and dark gray colors, that's representing at least a low end threat for a tornado. And you'll also notice that back down in Nebraska. So there's a couple areas to watch for today. Again, the tornado risk is overall still on the lower side of things, but we very well could see a couple tornadoes today evolve across areas like Minnesota, maybe northwest Wisconsin, and again back through areas in eastern Nebraska. Now here's your timing for today, beginning with 11 to 12 o'clock this morning. Again, storms rolling through areas near Duluth, and these storms overall are not going to be really severe, but this will actually help to stabilize the atmosphere a little bit. So the supercells that develop later today will have a little bit more of a tough time getting going because of that stabilization of the atmosphere from that rain. But by about 5-6 o'clock, storms are firing off. The ones that are the most discreet will have the best chance of producing a tornado risk, and overall the storm height isn't expected to be extremely high today. So a lot of these storms will be really just dealing with that low level rotation, and they'll have to see, will we actually see a tornado out of that? We probably will at least see 1 or 2 in this area, so definitely make sure you have that tornado action plan in place. By 7 to 8 o'clock, storms become much more disorganized. We could perhaps see maybe an isolated storm or two still being severe, but because of that rain that we're seeing this morning, that is at least helping us to keep the atmosphere a bit more stable, which will lessen the risk for severe weather in comparison to what we actually could see. So that's, again, good news there. And eventually going into the overnight hours, all that rain moves off to the east. Storm activity is expected to weaken after 8 o'clock. Back over in Wisconsin, we'll be watching for storms really during the late afternoon, so 5-6 o'clock in northwest Wisconsin. These will move off to the east, producing a threat for damaging winds, large hail, maybe an isolated tornado, and eventually going closer to midnight, those storms move off to the east. Wouldn't rule out some gusty winds into the overnight hours near Green Bay, but overall the risk is low at this time. And by the way, I might go live for this event tonight, so make sure that you have the bell icon clicked down below so you get notified when I go live, as well as make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Now back over in areas like the Central Plains, storms firing off around 3 to 4 o'clock this afternoon. The initial cells will have a better chance of producing large to very large hail and tornado risk, but these will quickly evolve into more of a cluster by around 6-7 o'clock. These will move down to the south and east, producing damaging winds and eventually just weakening out as it heads towards Missouri during the overnight hours. Now as we head into tossing trampolines on tall trees Thursday, we do currently have 3 areas to watch for. Slight risk back over in the Ohio Valley, one other one back over in the Central Plains, and then back into areas like the Mid-Atlantic. These are the 3 areas I'll be watching for damaging winds, large hail, perhaps an isolated tornado. Damaging winds is the main concern though. Right now you'll notice that hatched area back over in the high plains in southwest Kansas. That's where we could see some damaging winds exceeding 75 miles per hour. Tornado risk right now is on the lower side of things. You'll notice back up in northern Ohio, that's probably the best chance that we'll see of a tornado, but overall it's still on the very low side of things at this time. For the timing as we go into tomorrow, we'll be watching for a lot of storm activity across areas that do not need more rain in the Ohio Valley as we go throughout the morning. By the afternoon, that will move off to the east through Kentucky. That could produce some damaging winds. Eventually going into the late afternoon, more storms firing up in parts of Michigan as well as Ohio and as well as Indiana. These will move off to the east, producing large hail, damaging winds, and again, maybe an isolated tornado, and eventually going closer to midnight. All that storm activity is out of here. And then once we go into Flying Fences Friday, there's two other areas that we have to watch for. One in the high plains, one over in the southeast United States, and one back over on the very far east coast in the mid-Atlantic region. We'll talk about more on this in our next forecast. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like button down below and subscribe if you're not already.